I mentioned earlier that, like everybody else, I finally did put together a maybe a way too early power rankings for the WCC going into the year. And maybe I'll probably put another one together as we get a little bit closer to the season. But here's kind of like thinking about where each team is at this point, what each team has coming back, what didn't come back, and just the coaching situations at each school, I think leads me to kind of think about where we are right now with each of these teams. All right, I'll start from the bottom and I'll work my way up. And I'm going to start at number 11, and that would be Pepperdine. Right now, this Pepperdine squad, I feel like with the new coaching staff, with a lot of new players, I don't know enough about what this team is going to look like strategically and then also personnel wise to really think that the Waves are going to really make that much noise, especially when you consider that, I mean, the most talented guys that they had from a year ago are gone. You look at the fact that Javon Porter is gone. Houston Millette is gone. You looked at the fact that you had a lot of guys who are good players for this squad and in the WCC are no longer with them. And yes, Pepperdine wasn't good a year ago. They were right there at the bottom with Pacific. So it's not like that this team is really they're not that much different from where they were a year ago. And even just that little bit of, yes, they were toward the bottom, near the bottom a year ago. I just look, the way I look at that squad is, especially with now what they're missing, is that I feel like that they're going to take a step back before they're able to take a step forward. There's going to be new energy in that building. I do wish the best for Pepperdine to kind of like be able to kind of get out of that hole and climb out of it. But right now, I would put Pepperdine at 11. At 10, I have Portland. Portland, it feels like since year one of Shantae Leggins, there's been regression every year. Some of it has been talent related, and I think that's definitely part of what we saw this year is it's a little bit more talent related. But we also there hasn't just been that growth that we thought we would see after that first year with the success that they were able to have. They've kind of slipped a little further back, and I just don't see the influx of talent that has gone back to Portland to really make up the difference from, especially consider what some of the other teams have been able to do in this offseason, and then also thinking about what some of the just strategically and some of the coaching changes that have also happened in the WCC. Like I feel like recent results and just recent trends make me put Portland right here. So until I see otherwise, like I feel like I'm going to keep Portland right here at 10. At 9, I have Pacific, and I'm pretty high on what Pacific could be going into the year. I really liked what Coach Dave Smart was able to do in the offseason. I like the hiring of Dave Smart for this squad. This looks like it's going to be a little bit of a grittier team. This is going to be a team that is going to have to kind of win on the margins if they're going to pick up those wins. It's a Pacific team that, I mean, can go no other direction than up, considering where they were a year ago. They were one of the worst teams, if not the worst team in college basketball a year ago. The entire roster has basically been flipped over. So you're going to be looking at a new team. So I based on the pieces that they were able to get in the transfer portal, based on the coaching change, I do like the direction that they are headed. And while obviously like where I have them at 9 is not a huge lead, it is definitely a better spot than where they were a year ago, even just obviously just a few months ago. Okay, next one I have is San Diego. San Diego is an interesting one to me because last year I had them pretty low. I think I might have had them last going into the season because I just didn't know about what they were going to have on their roster. I knew they had some talent. I knew they had some guys who like, oh yeah, you can look like kind of look to them and say that these are some talented guys who might be able to develop throughout the course of the season. And they started picking up some early wins, and I still wasn't totally bought in because of who they were playing. And then they stole that game against Arizona State. And that, I think, was the wake-up call that this San Diego State team is, you have to watch out for them. You cannot sleep on the Toreros. And I think that was last year was, I think, a testament to the coaching job that Steve Lavin was able to do, the testament to the talent he was able to go out and find, really almost kind of in the last minute, because it really felt like they were kind of still behind the 8 ball trying to fill out that roster, which to an extent is kind of what it feels like it's happening again this year, is that playing a little bit of catch up. So I do have a fair amount of confidence that Steve Lavin's going to be able to kind of get this team going. They're going to develop quickly. And we saw the moments last year that really kind of showed what San Diego was capable of. Now, they also lost a lot in the offseason. They lost the key pieces. What I was really disappointed to see Kevin Patton Jr. go. I was obviously seeing Deuce Turner head over to Santa Barbara was also a little bit of a hit. So, I mean, there were some guys that left San Diego that if they had held on to them, were able to hold on to them, and it's like, okay, now this is a team that's going to kind of like move up. They've got action. So right now, I think I have no choice but to kind of keep them at 8 based on where they are. But this is also, I think, like it's a tentative 8 because Steve Lavin has shown that he can develop these guys quickly and be able to turn that team around. And last year is a great example of what that team was capable of doing. Right now, all right, at 7 right now, it's going to be Oregon State. One of the 2 new members of the WCC. This was a team that finished toward the bottom of the Pac-12 a year ago. They do bring back some of the pieces from last year, but this is another team that got hit hard by the transfer portal. They brought in a lot of really interesting pieces to really kind of start to fill that out. But I think between the talent, I think is okay. Like I'm not going to just say that the talent isn't there to maybe move up the rankings if they start to play well early and then carry that in the WCC play. But at the moment, like they don't have the continuity that I think you would like to have in place. I don't think they have quite the talent of the teams ahead of them in these rankings to really kind of keep that consistent run throughout the course of WCC play. Again, way too early rankings, but right now I think that's where I kind of have to set Oregon State is at that 7 spot. At 6, I have Washington State. And yes, this was a team that made the NCAA tournament a year ago, but almost no one from that tournament team returned. They have a new head coach, David Riley. They had to hit the transfer portal hard. Now, one of the things I do like is that they were able to bring over at least a few of his Eastern Washington guys so that at least they can have some level of continuity, at least with the coaching staff. We saw how that worked at Portland a few years ago. It worked well. And so there's at least past history that shows that Eastern Washington guys can come in, hit the ground running in the WCC, and have some success. I also liked some of the other talent that they were able to bring in, bringing in the transfer guard from Calmes from Washington. I think is a huge add for Washington State. So this team is going to be good. They're going to be interesting, and I feel like they're going to be in that mix right there in the middle of the WCC race. But going in, thinking about what the talent-wise that they have at the moment, I have to I slot them in at 6. Right behind, very close. I feel like they were kind of like right there neck and neck with who I have at 5, and that is LMU. The Lions have a lot to prove this year. And we're at the point of at least like in the Stan Johnson tenure, we've seen what they're capable of doing when everyone's healthy, they're playing well, and everything else. That was a fun LMU team to watch a couple years ago. And that's a squad that I feel like they need to make the jump this year. They need to show some level of consistency. They need to show that they can start to challenge everybody else on a consistent basis. Challenge USF, challenge Santa Clara, challenge St. Mary's, Gonzaga. Yes, a couple years ago they were able to beat Gonzaga and St. Mary's. And sure, Santa Clara was able to beat Gonzaga, still struggles with St. Mary's. USF hasn't been able to beat either of them. So LMU over the last 2 years has done something that neither Santa Clara nor USF has been able to do. But they've also struggled with everybody else. They've dropped games to teams that they shouldn't lose to. They've dropped games to Santa Clara, dropped games to USF, dropped games to kind of like you look up and down the WCC roster. Like LMU's inconsistency has been kind of like their Achilles heel. And that's why, like, talent-wise, I really liked what they did in the offseason. I liked them getting Javon Porter. I liked them going out and getting Jan Vide. I liked them going up and getting the San Jose State transfer, who's really going to be able to add a lot to what they're able to do. They were able to put together, I think, a good team, like going into the year, adding to the pieces that they already did have, who they were able to bring back. Now we need to see it. And until I see what they're capable of doing on a consistent basis, I cannot put them ahead of the top 4 in this league. So right now, like, I have to kind of leave LMU at that 5 spot, which leads me to my top 4. Kind of know who the 4 are. And I feel like 3 and 4 are interchangeable at this point. But if I'm going on power rankings, who I think has the better upside, that's my separation here, is the better upside. So right now at 4, I'm putting USF. I'm putting them at USF at 4 because this is a team that has a very high floor. I know exactly who they are. I know exactly what they're going to do. What I don't know is if they can get over the hump and beat some of those better teams that they played, that they're going to be able to play this year. Obviously, we saw what happened last year. Just looking at the numbers, a year ago, they were 22-2 against teams KenPom 101 and lower. They were great and took care of business against the teams they were supposed to beat. Their challenge was the fact that they couldn't beat anybody else. They were 1-9 against the KenPom top 100 from a year ago. And even if you flip maybe 2 or 3 of those losses into wins, you're looking at a team that's knocking on the door of an NCAA tournament bid. You're not looking at a team that is on the road for an NIT game in their first round. You're looking at a team that is legitimately in the NCAA tournament by switching over 2 of those games, 3 of those games. And USF was that close in at least 2 or 3 of those games. So it's not like that they're that far away. What I wonder is going into this year, I like what they have at the guard in the backcourt. I really like Malik Thomas. I like what they have with Marcus Williams. I like Ryan Beasley. I really like that group together. My concern going into the year, my question going into the year, is how much of an impact is the departure of Jonathan Mobo going to have? Honestly, that wasn't something I thought that they were going to lose. I did not think that Mobo was going to end up jumping to the NBA this year. I didn't think he was going to be the 31st pick in the draft, which, I mean, he put in the work. He looked great, and he looked great in the workout. So congrats to him. But for this USF team, to me, thinking about them, it leaves a big question mark. Now, we didn't think Jonathan Mobo was going to be who he turned into going into the year. So maybe there is somebody on this roster who is going to have that breakout year for USF. Maybe it is Carl Lingard, who transferred over from USTA. There could be someone else on this roster who's that next guy up for the Dons who's going to step into that role. But I don't know. What I do know is that this team is about as consistent in who they have been over the last 8 years as anybody on the West Coast. And USF right now, that's why I'm going to stick them at 4, because they are just, I know who they are. They're going to be consistent. I'm waiting to see the upside of who they are. And speaking of the upside, that's why for me, Santa Clara sits at 3. I mentioned it earlier. What Santa Clara was able to bring back continuity-wise, what they were able to bring in Carlos Stewart, the fact that they have a schedule that is going to give them plenty of opportunities to get tournament quality wins, resume builders. What this team's challenge is going to be is after they get some of those wins, because we saw them beat some of those teams a year ago in the non-conference. We saw them beat Washington State. We saw them beat Oregon. They're capable of getting those wins. Can they avoid the pitfalls? Can they avoid the slip when someone might be banged up, when someone misses a game? And if they can overcome that, this is a team that is going to be in the hunt in March, going to be in that conversation for an NCAA tournament bid. Hell, all it takes is one bad game in Vegas. We could be looking at maybe one of the opportunities that someone other than Gonzaga or St. Mary's could actually win the WCC tournament. Which leads me to 2. And I feel like 1 and 2, obviously we know the 2 teams, but I feel like the order at this stage is also obvious. At number 2, it's St. Mary's. St. Mary's has been the regular season champion. They shared it 2 years ago. They were the sole WCC champion last year, regular season and tournament. You lose Aiden Mahaney. You lose Josh Jefferson. You lose some other role players as well. You lose Alex Dukas. And they had to go out and reshuffle the deck. But this is still a team that brings back the reigning WCC Player of the Year in Augustus Marciulionis. This is a team that still brings back the reigning WCC Defensive Player of the Year in Mitchell Saxon. You still have Jordan Ford, who I think is going to Jordan Ross, who I think is going to have a great breakout year. You bring in Paulius Maruskas, who I think is going to also be another one of those breakout candidates. Just watching him play for Lithuania over the summer, like he looks great. So that's a guy I think you're going to have a lot of eyes on. The addition of Ashton Hardaway, the son of Penny Hardaway, who's coming in. I think he's going to add that kind of that missing piece, not that missing piece, but like that missing action that you would have had with Alex Dukas. He's going to be a good 3-point shooter, so you kind of look there. This is still a team that's going to be deep. This is still going to be a team with size. They're going to do the little things right. We just know that because it's a Randy Bennett coach team and they don't make those sorts of mistakes. And they, again, right now, this is a team that knows how to get it done in the regular season. They are going to also be challenged in the non-conference with a number of really good games themselves. But this is also a team that's going to need to find itself a little bit as well, because you do still have, you're replacing essentially your 2, your 3, your 4, and you just need time to kind of like rebuild that connection, that flow and everything else through the offense and everything else. So roles are going to be, I think, it's going to be really interesting to see how the roles kind of flip-flop and change as we go along in the non-conference. But the St. Mary's team is still really good. This team still has a ton of talent. They still are the number 2 team in this league as of right now to me. Which leaves number 1 and being Gonzaga, which is no surprise. This is a team that by most accounts are going to be a top 10 team, by many a top 5 team. This is a team that's going to challenge for an NCAA. This is a team who could be the team that wins a championship. This could be the team that finally does it. And it's not a team that I don't think jumps out on star power, but you have one of the best point guards in the nation, Ryan Nembhard. You have one of the best fours in college basketball, in Graham Ike. You bring in Michael Ajayi, who led the WCC in scoring and rebounding a year ago. You have Nolan Hickman, who knows the system and knows how to play here. You bring back Ben Gregg, who is going to just do all the dirty work for what this team is going to need. This team is deep, deeper than maybe any of the others of the last few years. While they don't have the NBA talent that we've seen and gotten used to over the past, or at least some of the teams have had, especially those title year teams have had. This Gonzaga team, I feel like while they have very, very good players, maybe some of the better players in college basketball at their positions, this is going to be a sum of their parts team. I think that this is going to be that non-conference schedule they have is going to test them night in and night out. I think the WCC schedule is going to be also test them night in and night out. I don't think there's going to be as many nights off as there maybe have been. And this is a team that just knows how to win in March. So until proven otherwise, this Gonzaga team is going to sit at 1 going into the season in my power rankings. All right, so quick review. So I did have Gonzaga. So I'll go back 11 up to 1. So I did have at number 11, I had Pepperdine, number 10, Portland, 9 Pacific, 8 San Diego, 7 Oregon State, 6 Washington State, 5 LMU, 4 USF, 3 Santa Clara, 2 St. Mary's, and at 1 Gonzaga.